Hello and welcome to another episode of the Selfish Podcast. Today we have Dr. Monica Jackson, who I'm excited to connect with, share with you, the audience, and get to know a lot more and just find out her life, her story, and her journey. So welcome, Dr. Monica. How are you today? And can you share with me and the audience, where in the world are you and what time of day is it for you?
Thank you for having me, Luke. I'm so excited to speak with you and your audience. And I am in Southern California in the USA, and it's sunny. It's about 100 degrees out today, and it's a beautiful day.
Nice. I am from the UK, but in Spain at the moment, and it is incredibly hot. I don't know what it works out to your temperature, but it's 40 degrees here in Spain, which I think is 110 maybe in yours. I'm not too sure.
That's hot.
It's very hot. Luckily, it's the evening that we got this call because it's 9 p.m. here for me. My only issue now is possibly mosquitoes, but I've got a cover to wrap over. So halfway through the show, you might see me swatting a few mosquitoes or wrapping myself up.
It is quite bright for 9 p.m., you said?
Yeah, 9 p.m. The sun hasn't set yet. It will be dark around 10, half 10. It starts to get really dark.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, very long days at the moment. Very hot, very long days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of nice to have long days.
Yeah, no, I say you can get a lot done. With the heat, I find it really hard. I can feel how much energy it takes to do basic tasks when it's so hot. Yes, luckily, yeah. I am next to a river, so I've been jumping in and out of that pretty much every hour. I think I've been in it 6 or 7 times already today just to cool down.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
What I like to do with my guests to get to know them on a more personal basis is start from the beginning and hear about their childhood. Can you paint me a picture of what life was like for you, say pre-10 years old? Like what did your parents do? Where did you grow up? And how was life?
Wow. Ooh, that question I wasn't expecting, but 10 years. I'm going to say I grew up prior to 10 with my mother and my stepfather. In Southern California, we were a very close-knit family. We did a lot of things just celebrating. We were a very religious family. We attended church every Sunday, pretty much sun up to sundown on a Sunday. Our friends were in church. We did a lot of church activities. We actually lived what we were taught. We did a lot of family outings, always family gatherings. My mother used to sell a product called Mary Kay, and that's
I've heard of that
skincare line. And my mother and father both sold products called Amway, and Amway had all different types of, anything from house cleaners to skincare, just everything. And so every Friday, we would kind of have, get together at our house. Everybody would come to our home, extended family. We had fish fry. We weren't Catholic, although Catholics tend to do fish on Fridays. We had a fish fry, but it was always just a time of gathering and get together. The holidays, 4th of July, we were always at a beach, at a picnic, just having lots of fun, making homemade ice cream and just all of the extended family. My mother is the youngest of I can't remember how many brothers and sisters, maybe like 12 or 13. And wow. Then my stepdad is the oldest of like 12 or 13. So the dynamics were totally different. You had the baby of the family and the eldest of the family. So it was just kind of different back then.
Oh, amazing. That's
but overall,
lot of family.
I had a great childhood,
No, that's incredible. And it's so beautiful to hear. It's very inspiring to hear about someone that's just had a beautiful family life, especially for me to have that generations all gathering and actually spending quality time together. I think is crucial and just such a beautiful way to start your life. So yes. Nice to hear. And what was school like for you?
School was, I loved school. I matriculated through school. I was a very obedient child. Like I said, I just loved school. We had elementary school. We went to junior high. I actually went ahead and went to college. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. And that was because a math teacher inspired me to go to college. I went ahead and gone to school. I got my master's degree in the midst of going through a rocky marriage and trying to not put so much on him, so to speak, so that I have a different outlet. So I went back to school, got my master's degree, and then eventually through life, because of another mishap of losing jobs and careers, I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate degree. And so I use obtaining knowledge and going back to school as an outlet for me. That's kind of my healing process. Doing something constructive, it takes away from the wounds of life or things that you don't want to deal with. And that's how I went through education.
Oh, nice. Apologies, the wind just picked up if it's disturbing my mic at all, but it should be fine.
Sounds fine.
What comes to mind first? Not necessarily what was first, but in your early life, what struggle or stress comes to mind?
The struggles and stress that comes to mind, I'm going to go back to when, and I'm not going to say that I truly remember everything, but for some reason, I still see this vision. And when I was 2 or 3 years old, I had a playmate. I had a playmate that I played with, and it was a little girl, and her brother was just a few years older than her. I don't know how old, but he was a bigger guy, just say maybe 3 or 4. And we played. I remember them having this big brown house next to ours, almost like a gingerbread house looking. And our home, we lived in a quadplex. So that's 4 different homes, kind of in an apartment style. And literally, I remember hearing sirens, hearing ambulance and fire trucks and different things like that. And I still, I'm 57 years old now. I'm telling you something that happened when I was 2 or 3. I still vividly remember that. Yeah. I don't recall what happened. All I know is that I no longer saw my little friend anymore. And what happened, what I was told had happened was her brother actually found his father's weapon and accidentally shot her. And she died. Oh. So at 3 years old, I think about this now because I learned to adapt at a very young age. I learned to deal with loss at a very young age. I learned to continue to move on in the process of a loss, not really knowing that, but that was was the first wound that I can relate to that really had an impact on me, not knowing that until years later.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible story and very impactful. Like you said, it's such vision of it now, so such clarity and remembrance of exactly how it was and what happened. And just out of interest, do sirens now, do they startle you at all, or it's no effect? Does it bring it back?
No, they don't. And it was so funny because I really wanted to go back and find this house again. And I don't recall the street I do recall the street. And I just want to drive back over there and just see what the neighborhood looked like, just to reminisce and see what triggers, not necessarily negative triggers, but what comes to mind. That's just something that I wanted to do.
Yeah, nice. And do you remember in your earliest memories, do you remember the first sort of dream or ambition or something you just wanted to do with your life?
The first ambition, gosh, I think we all probably want to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I think because I live next door to a nurse and I would always see her smiling. And that's, she always just seemed happy, helping people. And of course, I didn't go into medical, but that's kind of something that I thought about doing initially.
Nice. I was actually relating with this with someone else and on a podcast episode, and she was talking about just one tiny little interaction she had. It was with a nurse as well, that she was in the hospital for a lot of her childhood, and she goes, one nurse just treated her a certain way, and she goes, that just changed her whole life. And I think that just shows us how important every moment is. You don't know how you're going to impact someone else, what influence you're going to give. It can change and form someone's life so easily.
Yes, absolutely.
And so now you said you got your doctorate, and what do you do with it now? What's your practice? What do you do?
Well, what I do now is I am an instructional designer. I design training programs and curriculum for universities and businesses. And my doctorate degree is in educational leadership. So that's kind of what I do. I teach part-time for universities as well. And it was something I just stumbled into. It wasn't something that I set out to do. But, sometimes when you go through life, I believe you find certain passions, certain things that interest you, or things that are placed in you that you never realized were there. And it's not until life happens to you that you start to realize your purpose, your mission, what you really want to do, the impact you want to make. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, you have to go through sometimes being wounded in life to get to where you should be.
No, exactly. Well put. It's very much how my life has been. And I'll explain to you briefly, you might not know my history. I had a really traumatic childhood I didn't have the family that you had in that way. I grew up with my mum as a single mother. I saw my father on the weekends briefly. But during the week, my mum had severe schizophrenia, like really, really bad. And that caused a lot of issues at home and a lot of bizarre things. I had suicidal issues from like 7 years old. And I was really depressed most of my life, about 20 years. And it was very chaotic. And it wasn't until I sort of went through more trauma, more stress and more chaos. And I had my last suicidal moment in about 2015. And I was literally standing on a bridge about to jump into 6 lanes of traffic because I just couldn't take the stress of life that was happening around me. My mum had committed suicide 7 times that year, and they hadn't worked, but I had to take her to hospital. My love, Danielle, she was 29 and she had a cardiac arrest, and she was told she was brain damaged, wheelchair bound, and I became her full-time carer. And the foreseeable future was bleak, to say the least. And I just couldn't, after so many years of trauma, I couldn't envision how life could feel good. But something within me sparked. Something said, like, you can find joy in life within you, no matter what. And I went on a new path, and it wasn't instant, but it was a big part in that transformation, was that life is serving me in all moments. I'm here to be of service, and life is serving me. It may not look like it, but it's happening. And then once that perception changed, suddenly I could see things in a different light. Suddenly I had faith. Like, I was brought up in a Christian sort of background when I was a child, mainly through my nan's Irish, and it was through her sort of upbringing that she brought the religion in. But when she passed, that went. And when I was a child, I prayed and prayed, and I felt I got no answers. Nor did I see family or anyone taking it seriously. So I sort of like, oh, this isn't serious. There wasn't really any study. There wasn't any weekly events. None of that happened. So it was like that sort of become dismissed. And then I became dismissal of the whole system, and the idea of faith would make me cringe, it made me uncomfortable. And now I call myself a man of faith. It's like there's a faith in life, there's a beauty in life, and you can thrive in that, in chaos. And that was the sort of epiphany that I had. And apologies, there's a motorbike coming past. Where I am in nature, there's a dirt track, and so it might be a little bit noisy just for a second. Just wait for him to pass. But yeah, that was a big transformation for me, was going through that process and realizing exactly how you said it, and coming to that with that, like you said, it's a choice. You can see it either way if you want. But one is a much more beautiful sight and one isn't. And I've seen both, and I definitely want to stick to one just because it's much more comfortable. I can smile. I couldn't smile for years. I could smile just for nothing, almost, just for life, just for living.
Yes. Well, and I want to touch on some of the things that you just said, because yes, I told you about my childhood. I told you about how I was raised, how I had a great childhood family. That changed. That changed. It was no longer the family that I thought it was. It was an illusion. As I said, we grew up in church, grew up as a faith, my parents ended up divorcing. And I want to say that I did not see growing up, and I did not know better, that people were only talking their faith, not living their faith.
Mm.
I didn't realize that people spoke of this God, but wasn't living as if there was a God. I didn't see them. I saw how they act on a Sunday, but Monday through Saturday, life was totally different for them. In their language, in their actions. One of the things that I definitely pride myself on is being very authentic, who I am all the time. My language or voice may change, but overall, my character, my integrity is the same, no matter what. And I found that growing up, that wasn't the case with me, even in my family. They had this illusion, but did you value your marriage? Or did you value your wife? Were you excessive and tipping out, so to speak? So I talk about in my book, Wounds of Wisdom, about growing up in the church and literally seeing my stepfather behind a building with a woman that wasn't my mother.
Mm.
I talk about later in life about my mother being in an adulterous relationship for over 40 some years. The impact that that had. And we keep quiet, we keep silent, and it's accepted. It's condoned. And a lot of times too much in life is condoned. We keep silent about things and it hurts people. It wounds people. People live as if they are the only ones impacted by their decisions and their choices. I think people are very self-centered, not selfish. Selfish means self-care. We're not taught to love ourselves. We're taught to do and fit in to what society wants us to become. I believe that if we say things enough or are taught things enough, hear it over and over, we will believe it. And I think too many people don't know themselves. And I know that for me personally, I struggled in many areas with respect to my gut and my instinct. I kept silent when I should have spoken up. I didn't speak up because I was concerned about not telling the family business, not wanting to embarrass anyone, not wanting to look, upholding an image that someone else had given me to be, not necessarily who I was. So it wasn't until I was severely wounded by my family, by my church, by my workplace, that I said, you know what, Dr. Monica, you're losing all of these other things. People could care less about you. And I feel that way, that people really don't care about you unless there's something they can get from you or you have to offer them when it's convenient for them. They want you to be there for them. But when you need them, they're not there. And I talk in my book, I talk about friends' wounds. There's a chapter in there. One thing about me is I always will speak up. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to say, here's some options, you choose. If something is wrong, I'm going to bring it to your attention. If it's right, I will say so. That's just the type of person I am. And sometimes when you walk in being authentic and true, people can't handle that. People want you to be what they want you to be. They want you to stay in this system that is not embracing you, staying in this place that's harming you, going back into a place that's wounding you. And it's no wonder we see all these abusive relationships. We see so much going on in the world because we're condoning things. We're not dealing with it. And, I mean, just something simple as calling a friend and saying you need to talk. And friends that you've known years, 20 some years, but they can't even pick up the phone and call you back. Or you there's a misunderstanding and you say, well, hey, let's talk about this. Oh, I don't want to talk to you because now they're embarrassed by it. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And then years later, they'll reach back out to you and say, I accept your apology. Well, you accept my apology, but you didn't apologize for what you did. There's no accountability. And so it's just amazing how I see society differently now. I see family different now. I see church different now. I see religion. I see things for what they are, not for what I want them to be. There's a difference in my faith. And there's a difference between faith, foolishness, and fallacy. And I don't think a lot of people understand those differences.
Yeah, no, I resonate with everything you said. And I feel for me, like another part that changed for me is because that at one point during my sort of growth, that became painful. That became its own form of suffering. And it's like you break through these sort of childhood traumas, you break through these issues and you feel sort of good about things. And then you get this whole new outlook and this whole new system of pressure. And, and like you said, how society is viewed, how things are, how people behave and interact. And like you said, especially when it comes to the closest ones, family and friends, people you grew up with, for whatever reasons, whether it's the technology at hand, the lifestyle, the health, whatever it is that's happened. And I found, for me, apologies again, there's noise. There's a couple of dog walkers going past now. It's been silent all day up until this point. But yeah, for me, it was just, I had to keep telling myself, like, I can be of influence, but I have no control over anyone else's life's decisions, how they behave, my emotions, my feelings, my choices. They're independently all mine. And I can do what I want. And that's all that matters. And if I can influence with that, great. If I can't, I can't, but I'll try. But I'm not going to be concerned if they don't adhere to it. If they don't, like you said, I will stay authentic. I'll be myself. I've connected with people on podcasts more than I have with friends that I've had for 20 years.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Wow. That truly resonated with me because what you just said there, I find that I connect with people that are total strangers. And why is that? Because we have chosen to be authentic. The ones, our friends, our families, church members, they're still not walking in authenticness. They are walking in this illusion of their beliefs that they don't understand what they believe. They don't even know what they believe. They're doing this because this is what they've been taught to do. And when you find that that system has rocked your world, so to speak, when you realize you can't even go and return to the same people where you found solace, you can't, because they can't relate to you. They can't be true. They can't speak what's true. They won't speak, they won't even ask questions. They'll just go along with. And I find that through my book, the people I've met have just been amazing. These people have reached out to me more than my family have, and I'm talking about my blood family, my so-called church family. I talk about in the book, these people could care less about it. They say they do, but their actions totally speak different. When they know you're going through things and they don't reach out, or you reach out to them and you don't get a true response, but they expect it from you. So I totally understand what you say. I'm so grateful to this technology, because during the pandemic, if it wasn't for this technology, I probably would have lost my mind. And I say that literally, because you can find yourself in a state of feeling like you're going through a depression because your family let you down, your pastors let you down, your mother let you down, your relatives let you down. Anyone you reach out to lets you down, all because you won't follow what's wrong. And everybody is following what's wrong, and as if you can't speak up against it. If you think about the legal system, and this person is guilty, but because there's so much politics and nobody really wants to deal with the reality and truth, they'll just accept it. And I see that too much with people. People just accept things that they have absolutely no clue about. They're more followers than they are leaders. Take, for example, this COVID. I don't know how COVID is in Spain, but the government told you to do this, jump through all these hoops, get this shot, get this one, get that, get this booster, go do this. And people are just, running around fearful. I mean, just totally fearful of what somebody else is saying. How about investigating it for yourself? Where is, with Christians, we talk about this place is not our home. We're going to go to a better place. There's where the streets are paved with gold. This milk and honey. But everybody's afraid of dying. Nobody's ready to die. That doesn't make sense to me. There's a better world, a better place on the other side, but we aren't embracing that. Some people lose their mind when their family member die or their friends die. But as a Christian, didn't we say it's supposed to be better? On the other side, how do we know it's better? How do we know it even exists? Who told us? Why do we believe this? Yeah. So I'm in a place of questioning right now. I'm in a place of, you know what? I'm just not accepting some things anymore because it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, and for me, it's very similar. It's like, and I'll tell you a little bit about how COVID was here, but first I just wanted to add to that last point. And for me, it was like, I used to fear death incredibly. I'd have nightmares and dreams of like end of the world scenarios. I'm going to die and all these fears of death. Yeah. And like I said before, I had like suicidal episodes most of my life. So it's quite an irony that I was also frightened of death. But you think about taking it. It did make me question life in general, which was good and a blessing, but it was like this immense fear. Whereas now I have no fear because I'm like, if I die, I died authentically. I'm not looking for it. I'm not asking for it. I'm not welcoming it. I do my best while I'm alive and I act that way. And then if I die, then I die at some point, whether it's today, tomorrow, in a moment. I don't mind. I'm not asking for it. It just happens. But I'm going to live to the full while I'm doing it, being productive, being of service, and trying to actually bring some harmony into the world. I'm always trying to counter that balance. I'm like, how much more balance can I bring into the world than I take? Because we're always taking through so many things, like you said, through others. I'm always looking at these podcasts, looking at how I serve on YouTube, and I'm just thinking, what's the most I can give? I don't care what I get. I'm just trying to give as much as I can. And I think that comes from like you. It's like, I felt so much that everyone else just wants to take. I don't want to do that. It makes me cringe. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to take, so I'm just content in as much service as I can provide, and like I said, allowing others to do whatever they want to do. If I can influence them another way, I've like with you in your book, I've had some beautiful messages and people said really impacted their life and changed them for the better. And like we said, we don't know if that one moment changes one person and they go on to change thousands. You never know. Yes. If you can bring them something beautiful, maybe they'll bring something beautiful. And, maybe this will change within time. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of fear. I found one thing through fear, it's not productive. You don't get a good job done. So with all these people out there full of fear, it's like you're not in your most productive. So if there is whatever there is, a chaos, an extreme event, you're fearful. You're not going to be productive. Who wants a fearful warrior going to fight to save their family? You want the brave, courageous one. You think you're going to survive. And as for COVID here in Spain, it was one of the most extreme in, I think, Europe. We had that in Italy because they got it quite early. And they shut down things and tested things, I think, before they did in the rest of Europe. And at the beginning, we were shut down for like 4 months, I think, where you weren't allowed to leave within 50 meters of your property. If you went to the shop, it had to be the local one. You had to have a receipt. You could only have one person in a car. There'd be police stops and checks to make sure that your receipt was from the local one. And you had a sheet with your address on it to say that's where you live. So they could verify that you are from that town, that you have gone to the shop and that you have gone and shopped for food and products like that. So it was quite strict, in that sense. I was very fortunate in that situation that I had stayed on a friend's piece of land and they were the management of a luxurious golf resort in Spain. And because of the event, they shut down the golf course, but we had permission to use the golf course as our garden and that counted as private property. So we got to walk around that for the 4 months. So that helped.
Nice.
So, weren't quite 50 meters for us, but the rest was hard. And that form for me, like I said, with my mum having that mental illness and doctors telling me that it's most likely you're going to inherit it. You could get it. They didn't really know much about it. And, it was just, you was always given that fear when you was a kid. And like I said, full of fear. And that made me really intensely control my mind and my actions. I went to the gym, worked out. I was like, I've got to take care of my body. How do I take care of my mind? Don't drink, don't do drugs, don't do all them things because your mind's precious. And that led me in that very controlling mindset for a long amount of time. So when that happened and someone's taking that control from me, that's like can bring an extreme discomfort because you're not in control. But at that same period when that happened, I was also going through the idea that if life is serving me, if this is meant to happen, and I can't control the external, I can only control my own internal self. It also became quite ironic and funny that I was able to go through it a lot smoother because I was just thinking, this is a really good test of that for me. Life's testing me right now to show me that I'm not in control of the external. So all that control I want, just focus it within.
And I love that you said that because, one of the things I try to do, even through my book and just me as a person, to give people to tell themselves, love yourself enough to love yourself. Give yourself permission to love yourself. Give yourself permission to heal. Give yourself permission to be happy, to be at peace. And whatever that takes is what you do. Because I feel that if you're not whole, you can't serve anyone else. You're going to harm and hurt everyone else. You're not thinking properly, just like you were talking about this control that, that we had during COVID. Well, if we're under this control, we're under fear, we can't function. We can't think. I mean, I didn't know what was going on a lot of times with COVID because I didn't watch the news. I turned it off. I could not control it. So why allow that into my space? You talked about, or even going into a place that's not making me feel good. That's not bringing me peace. That's not serving me, adding value to my life. In fact, it's making me feel uncomfortable. And when I'm talking about a physical church, making you feel uncomfortable there. You're not welcome. You're not, your spirit is disturbed, so to speak. But you keep going back because you're taught that. That's what you're taught to go there. But then you're on the opposite side. Well, why would you continue to go somewhere that's continuing to wound you? It's almost like returning to abusive relationship. You have to change your mindset. Thing that you mentioned about your mom and her mental illness and how they said that you could have that. Well, I don't receive any of that either. And until you find your own space or someone that can tell you something different, sure enough, it's possible because that's the environment you were raised in. You are doing the same things your mom's doing in that same environment. If you are doing the same things, eating the same things, same lifestyle, then you have a higher propensity of that illness. Now, if you combat that, do something differently, like you said, take care of yourself, you have a higher chance of not getting that. And I don't think we understand that. I believe we truly have control over our outcome. I don't care what illness is in your family. If you know it, I believe you have the control and the power to reverse that. You have to study what they're doing and not do what they did, so you don't have that same outcome.
Yeah, definitely.
But we are too willing to accept what other people tell us. We are, so willing. The fear. You talked about a suicide attempt. I had a suicide attempt too. And it's interesting because you talked about it, the situation with your mother. Well, mine was with my mother too. My situation was, I think I was maybe 15 or 16 years old. And the issue came out where we're church members. We are a prominent family in the church. Everybody's known us. I grew up in the church, and all of a sudden there's this exposure of my mom's adulterous relationship at the church. Thankfully, I wasn't there. Just the embarrassment that I had to deal with, what I felt just just how people were going to look at me, how they were going to perceive me. And sure enough, some of the comments that I got from, the older women or men in the church were geared because of something my mom did. I had no control over that. I was a child. Some things are, oh, there's the slut's daughter. Well, how dare an adult say that to a child? It's just amazing how you think people are mature and they're not. You think people are loving and they're not. And it's painful. But we will never know that someone else has gone through this unless we speak. One of my message, my mission, and my movement is to unsilence the silence. Silence heals. Speaking up heals. And if anyone's listening, speak up. I know when I was going through some of the most painful things in my life, one of my friends, a good friend, told me, oh, well, don't talk about it so much. Don't say anything. Don't just pray about it. What she did not understand was that was killing me internally by holding it in. It was literally killing me. I felt like I was dying physically. And once strangers would start asking me, how are you doing? And I said, I'm not doing too well. And they would say, why? And I would explain to them, I felt the release. I felt the weight lifting. So I encourage people to speak up and speak to strangers. Speak to strangers because you never know what that other person is going through. So as I was going through this suicide attempt, because I was embarrassed, literally, I took some pills. It wasn't enough to kill me. I wrote a suicide note. But what happened after that? The ugly things that my mother said to me. And also, we've never spoken about that incident to this day. Nobody's brought it up. Nobody said anything. Interesting, as I'm older now, I'm 57 years old, and I, of course, have written the book and, spoken about it. And I didn't realize how many relatives knew this happened, but nobody came to my rescue. This is family. So what we need to do things differently. If we want a better society, we have to make better people. We have to teach people to love themselves first. Selfish, selfish, literally. But we're not taught to be selfish. Teach us to love ourselves first. When we love and genuinely love ourselves, we can love others. Because at that point, because we know what true love is for ourselves, we will reject anything that doesn't feel like love. We won't entertain it. We will speak up about it. Yeah. And I think that, it's not taught.
No, and that's I really want to get into that self-love bit because that's a big part of my journey as well. And I just wanted to bring up something you just said that reminded me. I found out maybe only a year ago, because my mother passed recently within must be now 6 months ago. And during that time, I spoke to one of her sisters, rang me up, and we had a longer conversation than we've had in years. And she was telling me that her and her husband were thinking when me and my brother were children that we could live with her because they were worried about our condition. I was like, I find out now. I went through my whole life thinking nobody cared. No one come to our, like you said, to our rescue. No one wanted to take us out of the situation that was so obvious. I was like, most of them didn't turn up to visit that often because it was too much of a bad, I think, painful situation for them to envision. It's like, you're leaving two children there to deal with it, to live in it, in really dirty and unhygienic conditions without food, and just in a very bizarre environment. I found if only they'd even told me, I probably would have said no when I was a child because I had a very caring instinct for my mother, even though I was aware that she was suffering, and I still felt there was some bond of love there that was innate that I wouldn't have wanted to leave her, but I would have loved to known that someone would have had that offer. And again, they didn't speak up. They didn't voice that for whatever reason. But it's like, so if someone's listening in a similar situation, it's like, speak up. Like you said, say the things you need to say if it's actually from a loving place. And that brings me to the self-love. Self-love, I'm not sure where the influence first came into my life. But I remember for me, it started actually, my love Danielle run me a bath, and I had never really had a bath, you know, and they always say how a female has a bath a certain way and makes it a little bit more special than a male does. She'd put candles in, she'd made it really nice, put some music on for me, and I've never had that experience. I got in the bath and she said, stay in there for like an hour or two. And I was like, I can't do an hour or two in a bath. I was like, oh, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I just scrub and get out. And she's like, just stay in there, have a proper bath soak. It's beautiful. And she could spend hours in there. And I didn't know how it's possible. And I was in there. And then I was just touched my arm at one point, and I was looking at my own hand and arm, and I was just realizing, like, this is my body, and I've pushed it so hard. You know, I haven't treated it with love. I've treated it like a dictator that's just, my body's a slave, and I'm using it to get what I want, to drive, to push by any means possible. But that encouragement wasn't from love. It was from anger. It was from, like I said, it was like someone whipping you to do things rather than someone just encouraging you and saying, you can do it, you're worth it, you deserve it, go for it. There was none of that. And I sort of had that revelation and realized, and then that started my journey to realize I didn't love myself, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait a minute. I was just in shock because it wasn't something I had thought about. It wasn't something that I had comprehended. And I realized I didn't love myself. And I literally had to set aside time daily, even if it was 5 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, to just sort of contemplate and try and feel. So not just to sort of think about it, but just really try and feel what love genuinely feels like for my own mind, for my body, and for life itself. And like I said, and over time, that just amplified. And in that process, I just lost all the judgments on others. You know, I felt much more this unbelievable feeling of sort of warmth and sharing and connection, even if no one was around. But for myself, and that's like I started a YouTube channel back to near the beginning of the pandemic because I saw a lot of people suffering how I had suffered from control and from depression and suicide. So I thought, you know what, I don't feel that way anymore. And a lot of that came from self-love. It came from certain techniques. So I was like, I'm just going to openly share as much of that as I can. And like you said, and just teach as much of that as I can and see if it reaches even one person. And it did. And it was beautiful. And I was so happy that I made that step. But that's what started. And then like a year later, after talking so much about myself, I thought, oh, I want to hear other people's stories and journeys. You know, and that's how the podcast started. And that's why it was called The Selfish Podcast. Because selfishly, I want to hear your story. It excites me, it ignites me, it connects me. Yeah, it makes me love life to hear people speak beautifully about life. And all my guests have. You know, like you said, it just happens that everyone I'm connected with has that perspective. And then I go into sort of non-digital world, and I don't seem to have too many of them interactions, especially in the towns and the cities. You know, occasionally out in nature, I might have a nice conversation, but yeah, having that ability online to connect with people like yourself is a beautiful experience that I can actually enjoy and be fully embraced in. And I think a lot of that started with just the simple practices of self-love. And I think it's opening up. And a big part for me was I used to say, like, I had my heart broken, like when I was younger for many reasons and different ones. And then I was like, do you know what? I had my heart broken open. I had to change that. I had to rewrite that and be like, no, I was broken open so I can love more, not less, not shut down. And again, that might have come because I was just trying to control myself all the time. But that's where it drove me to.
Well, you know, and again, I think it comes because of false expectations. We have false expectations because we're never taught to be ourselves. We're taught what to do. Go to school, you know, graduate from college, get married, have children, and live happily ever after. We're told these things, but what happens when the happily ever after doesn't happen? Then you are ostracized because, of course, church tells you God hates divorce. Well, on the flip side, it says, well, God joins together. Well, did God join me and my ex-husband together, or did I join us together? So if I joined them together, then I have every right to get out of it if it's not happy. But I spoke to a young lady before, and, you know, it's amazing. Like I say, we don't know what we don't know. And if we don't speak up and talk around the world, we will never know. She was telling me she was in an abusive marriage for over 30 years. She did not know it. She didn't know that she was being sexually abused by her husband. She tried to speak to her relatives and friends, but nobody was listening. Oh, just stay there. Oh, it'll get better. And, she's a 60-year-old woman that never learned to love, never had true intimacy. How sad is that? How sad is that we can't even be true? It's almost like we encourage people to fail.
Mm. Yeah, and definitely what you said with the expectations, and I think like that is one thing we're taught from sort of from our parents, but from the school system. You're taught that the expectation is all that matters, and that you have to pass whatever that is. Yes. And if it doesn't happen, you should feel bad. And like you said, you're not in control of everything. So a lot of the times, your expectations are never going to be met, and you're going to get something completely different. And you're going to feel terrible if you think that you're only going to feel good if they're met and if you meet them. And that was, again, as my journey went on. And it's like, I'd say the moment I got to unconditional self-love was the stability, I would say, in my growth and my love for myself, is I had to love myself unconditionally. And the only way I could do that is I had to drop all expectations of myself. I was like, I can't have any expectation on myself, how I behave, what I do, how I feel. I don't expect anything. I'll do my best to have balance, to have love, to have joy. But if I don't, I don't. There's no expectation. And once I released that pressure, that was like, again, then became external, and I could release my expectations on others and their behaviors, on everything that's going on, and just being like, just going what I would call being in the moment, but productive, with ambitions, with a future, with a goal. And if that goal doesn't get met, I'll go on to the next one. I'll adapt. I will be flexible. I'll find something else to be of service, to do something, to love life. I'm not going to have no goals and no ambitions. But at the same time, I can detach from the expectation of the feeling is only going to be there once I get there. And that, again, that was a big part, a big sort of revelation. And again, I think this is why I created this podcast, is these conversations that we're having right now. This is teaching. This is going to give someone somewhere a new perception or something. They may never have even, like me, thought about self-love. And they'll be sitting there going, wait, do I love myself? And they might question it. And that might be enough to spark them into a different journey, a different life, different perception, and work on them things. Or they might have heard, like you said, with your wounds, or they might read your book and suddenly see things in a new way. And I think it's them influences, sharing, like you said, not keeping everything locked in. And for some, they might need help to share a little bit. And online, there's plenty of places to find that stability or somewhere to sort of share in a little bit of comfort. But for most, what they're sharing isn't, they're holding in things that are subtle, and a lot of them. And it's like, you can talk about them things, you can say them things. Why are you so fearful? What's the worst that can happen? And again, it comes back to the expectation. I think it's like, but if I say this, I expect this will happen. What if it doesn't? What if it does? Who cares? You got to be yourself. You got to share. You got to connect. We're a very social creature. Whatever we are, we're social. That's for sure. Isolation is definitely a punishment.
Correct. You're right. And it's so funny because I feel like when I wrote this book, I didn't set out to write this book. It was because of pain and loss. And I wrote the book literally in 7 days. And I can't believe some of the things that are in the book. I'm like, oh my goodness, why would you say it like that? But that's how I felt. It was very authentic. And I know I actually used this book to let me see how people are going to respond to me. Let me see how people are. What I'm finding and what I have found, I thought the book would offend a lot of people because I'm talking against or about situations and institutions that we uphold. And that was totally opposite. What I found is readers were saying, oh, I felt that too. I saw that too. They're just confirming everything that's in this book. And it made me feel a lot better. It made me feel, wow, okay, I wrote this. But then it angered me. It angered me because I said, here I am, 57 years old. Why didn't I know that somebody else has gone through this already? Why didn't I have someone that I could have gone through this, held my hand, or just spoke to? And the reason is because we have to keep silent. We keep silent. I think we wound ourselves in many ways. We really wound ourselves in so many ways, but we don't know that. And I hope that anybody that's listening will, whatever you've gone through, your wounds, understand that there is wisdom in every single one of those wounds. And honestly, the only way you can get wisdom is to go through some wounds. You can't have a perfect life and come and have wisdom. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
How do you gain perfect peace? You gain perfect peace by going through perfect storms, because you know what those storms feel like. You don't want to go back. So you're going to look for something that's going to bring you peace. And that's what you're going to gravitate towards. Now, if you choose to stay in that negative environment, that's what you're going to stay. But bottom line, it's a choice. We have choice and free will to do whatever we want and deal with the consequences of those. And I would hope that we stop just accepting things. Stop just trying to please others, but help. I think when you listen to what someone says, you can learn a lot about them. You can connect. One of the things that I love is that all generations, 20 years old, 19 up to 80, have come to me and say, one of the things you do, you listen. You listen. Sometimes that's all we need, is someone to listen. We're not looking for you to solve our problems. We just need to get it out, because we need to release it, because it's such a weight, and there's no place to release it. Even, you have professional therapists, not speaking against therapy or anything like that. Sometimes I don't think they can relate. Sometimes I don't think that they have solutions. They have things to tell you what to do. But if you haven't been through those things yourself, you're not going to be as authentic. When someone sits and have a conversation with me, they're going to get what I'm, the authentic me. I'm not going to tell them, okay, do step 1, step 2, step 3. The steps are not going to work for everyone. Different situations call for different solutions. We are different people, and we need to embrace our differences instead of trying to make everyone the same thoughts, the same beliefs, the same religion. I mean, every religion thinks their religion is the best. They think they know, but no one that I know have been to heaven or hell and come back to tell about it. So we don't know anything. We don't know. We believe. We don't know. Big difference.
Yeah, and definitely with, like you said, with the different religions and different practices, different. And a bit like you, I noticed from a young age, from where I grew up in just south of London, there was a lot of different races and a lot of different cultures. So that brought a lot of different religions. And I was fascinated by them, because I had already questioned my own upbringing and noticed people not saying one thing and not following it. And that straight away was I think as a child, you notice them things because you've been given rules a lot. And then when you see the adults not actually following the rules and realizing it as you grow up, they follow them even less. It's really like, well, how can I listen to this person? Because they don't listen to themselves. So you're like, so I can't. I started to notice that in pretty much every religious group, and people practice it in every different way. Some are super strict, some are super loose, some are strict on holidays. Some, it was like all of them had such flexibility in how they practiced and preached and what they believed, what they did. And a lot of it was to have a community, to have a group, I think, to just have other people that we've got the same label, we can be the same. And like you said, in conforming and losing your own individual uniqueness, your own individual significance. And like you said, so it's great you're saying that, because I think that is, people need to know how individual they are, how significant they are, and how much life they have. And like you said, you can have a life of faith, you can have a life of God, you can have a life with a label if you want, you can have a religion, but do you adhere to it? You got to be authentic to yourself.
Correct.
And realize, is what I'm preaching, is what I'm reading, does that feel right to me? If so, act on it and actually follow through. If you're not going to follow through, question it and think and look somewhere else.
Right. Because I think I really believe that we have forgotten how to be humans. We don't know how to be human beings. And I say that because if you offend me or if you hurt me, I should be able to come to you and we should be able to have a conversation. We should be able to have a conversation as to, okay, this is how you made me feel. This is what happened. I didn't like this. And we should be able to resolve that. But what I get, the Bible says, go to the person that offended you. When you go to these people and you're ostracized, you are told you're out of line, you're wrong. But that's because they're trying to get something from you. And I think it's the saddest thing. Or if you go to them and you need help and someone say, okay, well then pay me to pray for you. Pay me to listen to you. It's really it's just sad what we are experiencing. Of course, you pay anybody, they're going to do exactly what you want to do. Where's the being authentic in that? So I just hope that, people start taking time to themselves and get to know themselves. And I think, honestly, that's what the pandemic was trying to teach us. It separated us. It isolated us. It required us to be with ourselves. Some people never have been alone with themselves and were forced to be with themselves because of that. They found themselves in that. I know I wrote this book during the pandemic, literally last year. So I understand, that's a wound. COVID was a wound, but there was wisdom that came out of that. There's a lot of things.
And I like the title "Wounds to Wisdom." Sorry if I keep twitching. A lot of mosquitoes are coming out.
Your mosquitoes are bother you.
Hopefully, I've still got enough blood to pack away and walk after this. But the wounds to wisdom I really like, because it resonates again with a lot of my journey in life. And it was, for me, I often say to, like, trauma and dealing with it is one thing. And I said, but for me, when I changed trauma to drama, and then I realized any good story has to have drama to make the character, so I had to rewrite and go, what can I take from that trauma? What can I take from that event? What can I take from the experiences from my mum? What can I take from the suicide attempt? And actively making the intention to look for something that's useful. I think you mentioned earlier something like that, to put something to use. It's like you got to make these things actually useful in your life. And to me, it's useful in your service to whatever your purpose is. And I believe everyone has an innate purpose, and I don't normally deliberately drop in my own book, but because it resonates with exactly what you say. And I created a book during COVID, just a fairly short one. And it came by sort of chance. I was actually writing a really long book, and then I ended up writing this shorter book, and it was called The Self, Who Am I? And it was like trying to give a perspective and clarity in someone's identity and a direction to a purpose, because I believe everyone has an actual core purpose. And when you're not acting towards it, you're going to start to feel unbalanced and get served by life influences to try and re-put you on your path. And I think most people don't really have a core identity to actually their life and themselves. So that's what created for me. And what inspired you? And I know time's getting short. I think we're coming up to an hour, so let me know if you have to jump on. We'll do another 5 minutes or so, but if you have to go, let me know. But what sparked you to actually put that sort of, say, pen? It probably wasn't pen to paper these days, but what sparked you to put pen to paper to actually get the book going?
January 29th of 2021, during COVID, I literally lost all of my contracts. So I had lost my contracts during COVID, but I lost this one. I gained this one back and lost it again. And the comment that was made was that I wasn't meeting expectations. I had the contract for years, so that wasn't true. So 2 days later, I felt like my God, the God that I resonate with, was waking me up every day for 7 days. And I just was sitting at the computer, just typing. Everything just flowed. Everything in the book just flowed. And 7 days later, after writing 8 to 10 hours a day, there's the book, Wounds of Wisdom. And it was written in 7 days, 7 chapters: friends' wounds, workplace wounds, church wounds, family wounds, marriage wounds, business wounds, and children wounds. And it all just flooded out. It just came out. But when I finished, I felt a release. I didn't realize the weight that it was holding on me, over me. I did not realize how much it was burdening me, how much I was just kind of going through life in many respects, not using my true identity and my gifts. But I saw them come out in the book. And I was actually too embarrassed to release the book. So I had 2 people read the book that didn't know me, and 2 people who knew me. They didn't know all of the story, but all the positive feedback. Oh my goodness, I went through this. Everybody could relate. It was just overwhelming. So again, here I am with 4 people that could relate. that now I can talk to. I can share some of these things. I don't have to be judged. I don't have to be, well, told just pray about it. Just go be quiet. No, we can relate. We can talk. We can help each other through these wounds. And with that, I published the book. I let the book stay as is. I only moved one chapter around. And that's how this book came to be. And the positive message that is had, the feedback, it's overwhelming. It's alarming to me. It saddens me, but it's also encouraging to me. It saddens me because, like I said, people are still going through this, but people are finally starting to speak out. I had someone read the book and say, your book stopped me from committing suicide.
Nice.
Another person said, your book made me feel less guilty about not going to church anymore. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do. What I'm telling you to do is get in touch with who you are, what you feel, and what works for you, not what works for everyone else. Because once you're in a place of your peace, what you can do for others, and you can serve people better when you're balanced, when you're whole, when you're healthy. We're not going to be perfect, but we're going to be better than where we were. And until you meet someone who understands that, you can't, and wants the best for you, then you start to feel differently. And I want to say, I thank everybody who's allowed me to come on their podcast, who's read the book, who's purchased the book. Everyone refers me back to someone else, go speak here, go speak there. And I'm just touched. I'm amazed by the people that I meet. I'm amazed by the stories that they share with me. And I'm happy that they trust me to share some of their innermost pains. And then they leave encouraged. They tell me things that they said they've never told anyone else. And like I tell them, okay, well, you're not the only one. Once they realize I'm not the only one, I'm not, you're going to be judged anyway. Some people are not going to like you. Some people are not. If they don't like you, oh, well, let them go. Gravitate towards people that loves the authentic you. Period.
Yeah, and I definitely see in society pretty much everywhere in the world that I see. I don't think there's any place so much you don't see it, but they said that fear of judgment, fear of other people's opinions and how they're going to, and it's like, if you really are so concerned about all these other people, like you said, work on yourself, you'll be able to serve them.
Yes.
Yeah, without running yourself tired, without wearing yourself out. And like you said, that will actually come from a good place where it won't shake you and you can feel that authentic. And it's easy to say, it's not an easy step straight away to take. So we're both speaking about it because we've gone through a path where we've started sharing these things, we started talking about them. But there's always a bit of hesitation at the beginning. Like you said, you was embarrassed to release the book. So if other people, these are normal feelings that are going to arise when you want to actually just let yourself a little loose and talk about things that are truly important and help you identify yourself and love yourself.
Yes.
In time, that continued repetition and pattern will grow. Like for me, the first time I met a girl unexpectedly when I was 15, fell madly in love at first sight. And, then we ended up together somehow. And I don't even know how it happened. And I hid my whole life. I kept everything a secret. She didn't even know about my mum for 2 years. I didn't tell her about my mum at all and somehow managed to keep that a complete secret. And the day that I decided for some reason to tell her, she might have even asked to meet her or something. And I couldn't utter the words, my mum's ill, without just a complete meltdown, breakdown, tears, shaking, feeling like I'm going to vomit. And that continued for, apologies, that bike is returning. So I'll just give it just a moment. I can cut this bit out maybe. I think it's past enough, hopefully. But yeah, saying that, and then the more I did say it, and it took many, many years many of my friends didn't really know what was going on in my life, school friends or anything. I had shame, I had guilt, I had embarrassment and all these things. I didn't want to talk about it. And it was when I got to a certain stage and I'd share it with people and I saw how, like you said, they were actually touched by me just sharing, that it encouraged them to want to share something back, whether it was even just how they felt about what I said, or they said they found that really inspiring, that they know me now and I went through that in some way. And I was like, oh, I thought I'd keep this secret forever to the grave. You know, I thought this isn't stuff you share. You don't share your suffering, especially if if you really care. You don't want to share because you feel like you might be putting that weight on someone else. The pain you felt, you might be giving that pain to someone else. And I think that comes down to like in the right place, but with the right intentions for yourself, for your attitude. You're not trying to give it. You're actually trying to let go of it.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I want people to know that you're not alone. You know, we are not alone. And for whatever reason, we feel like we are alone. We're the only ones, you know, that have been through things and everyone's gone through something. Now, whether they're going to speak about it and whether they tell you about it, whether they're going to be really true about it, that's something different. But those of us that I believe that are true about what we've gone through, you know, and I always say, you know, and it always sounds negative, but I'm okay saying it now. I don't care that nobody likes me. I don't care what people think about me. I really don't. And at one time, people would tell me, don't say that. That sounds so negative. You know, it sounds selfish. It is selfish to a sense, but it's selfish, but not self-centered. In other words, I can't please everyone. I can't make everyone like me. That's not for me to do anyway. And I hope people understand that. Not everyone's going to like what you do. Somebody's not going to like you. You can blame it on whatever, your race, your, you know, ethnicity, anything. But bottom line, that you're wasting energy and effort. I don't have time to waste on things that I can't control. The only thing that I can control is Dr. Monica. And hopefully I am the example that will help someone to discover their peace, discover their joy, to live authentic, to embrace and pay it forward, help someone else. That's who I am. And anything that disturbs my peace, I leave it alone. I don't care who it is. It's not easy. It has not been easy. Sometimes you have to walk away from family. Sometimes you have to walk away from longtime friends. Sometimes you have to walk away from relationships, marriages. But guess what? If it brings you peace by making that decision, do.
Oh, nice. Beautifully said. And so where can people get your book? Where is it available?
They can go to my website, drmonicajackson.com, and you can purchase the book there. They can book me for speaking engagements. And I also offer courses. And I have recently an academy. It's called Wholeness Academy. And basically, I want to help people bring some balance. You know, look at things differently. Let's deal with your wounds. Let's deal with those family wounds. Okay, we can't change it. We can't change the family. But what can you do to move forward? What can you learn from that? So each one of the courses, I have 7 courses. They're all entitled from the chapter of the book. So they're overcoming like family wounds, overcoming marriage wounds, overcoming children wounds, overcoming church wounds. And I did a survey, the top 2 courses that everyone wants. The number 1 course is overcoming church wounds.
Interesting.
The second one is overcoming family wounds. So again, that speaks volumes. If our churches are wounding us, our families are wounding us, we need healing in those areas. And that's where our focus needs to be.
Yeah, and the irony being there sort of should be the 2 core sort of foundations of growth and fixing your wounds, healing your wounds.
Correct. Yes.
Nice. And if you do, or if you have a recommendation, like, do you have a somewhere like a Facebook group? Is there a place where people can speak up, or do you know of one?
Well, I do have a Facebook group. I have, you can connect with me at Dr. Monica Y. Jackson 2022. I have another Facebook, Wounds of Wisdom book on Facebook. And then on Instagram, Wounds of Wisdom by Dr. Monica. And then I'm also on Twitter, Dr. Monica Y. Jackson. So, you know, I encourage people, start speaking up. I love to hear some dialogue there. I love to hear, you know, what are some wounds? I am not the expert to tell you how to live your life, but I want you to open up, start speaking about these things, start sharing. You know, I encourage, you know, I'm going to do workshops and different things like that. because I want people to take control of their lives. Stop giving that control away to others, to people who really don't care about you, who don't have your best interests at heart.
Yeah, and like I said, put your own best interest into your own heart first.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Nice.
And we have to learn that. We haven't learned that, and know that it's okay to love yourself first.
Yeah, and for me, I believe we're born that way. We're innately unconditional, loving beings, and we have to be conditioned out of it, let's say, through experience, through life, through programming, whatever we want to call it. But we have to be conditioned out of that. And it's just about re-immersing yourself back into what you actually are. Like you said, getting to know yourself, getting to know what you truly are. And in that space, that's where you thrive, because that's what you are. That's what life is.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
We're coming to the end of the show. I have just a few short, fun, one-answer questions. You can elaborate a little if you feel like, but I ask all my guests the same questions. Do you have a little bit of time for them? Won't take long.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your, if you had to choose one, a cat or a dog?
A dog.
What's your favorite color?
Silver.
I know it's my first silver. I don't think I've had anyone say silver. Yeah. What sound or noise do you love?
Ooh, water. Water at the beach. Just the peace and the calm of the water, the waves.
Nice. What sound or noise do you not love so much?
Explosions.
Yeah.
Sonic booms.
What do you love about yourself?
I love that I love myself. I love that I am true to myself. I am authentic.
Nice.
I genuinely love myself.
Nice. Beautiful to hear. And what do you love to see in other people?
I love to see joy in others. I love to see people enjoying life. Just enjoying, no expectations, just enjoying life, whatever you feel like doing at that time.
Nice. And the very last question. What do you love about animals? This can be in nature, it can be pets, however you see animals.
Animals, they just seem to be committed. Community. Unity.
Nice. Yeah, I love that.
You can learn something.
Well, it's been beautiful to hear your life and your story and to get to know you more personally. I really resonated with what you shared, and I'm very excited to share your story with my audience. And yeah, so grateful and appreciative of you being here. Especially, sorry, I'm still jumping because the mosquitoes trying to not get them in my eyes and up my nose. But no, it's been great to have you, and yeah, to hear your openness, your open heart, and your authenticity. It's always beautiful. So thank you so much for contributing.
And thank you for your platform and the opportunity to share.
All right, well, have a beautiful day. I think you said it's early for you, so you've got the whole day ahead of you. So I hope it's a great one. And we'll catch up one day in the future.
Okay. Take care of yourself, and thank you again.
And we'll do it for the listeners. I'll put all the descriptions and the links all in the description so they can follow through and find you and check out your course, check out your book, and highly recommend it. And I think they'll be motivated too from listening to your words.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.